Hello, thank you for being here. We are starting our roundtable about textile recycling market perspectives. Perspective du marché du recyclage textile. Pour les francophones, toujours pareil, vous pouvez demander un casque audio pour entendre la traduction simultanée en français des échanges. So welcome. Maybe we can start by a short introduction of our speakers. Please, Aissa, you can start.
Okay, thank you so much, Alice, for having me here, and thank you for the organization of this roundtable. So my name is Aissa Boukari. I am working as an independent consultant specialized in sustainability. So I work mainly with brands, and I help them to rethink their activities, their collection, toward better practices in terms of sustainability. I am working with them on different topics, for example, impact measurements. So I help them to understand their supply chain and their environmental impact of their collection. I'm also working on eco-design strategy, so how you implement that and how you can identify specific solutions to really reduce your impact and your footprint. And I'm also working on sourcing. So basically, it's like doing some jobs on traceability and engagement of suppliers. So a little bit of a background. I have background in engineering, and for 5 years ago, I decided to really specialize on the fashion industry, and I co-founded a brand also, which is called Estate Studio, that give me really the opportunity to tackle all the challenges that you can have when you are doing eco-design from scratch, when you are developing a first collection. And now I'm focusing on my consultancy activity.
Thank you, Karishma.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. I am Karishma, founder of Eslando. I am very excited to be here and talking about the topic, which is quite passionate for myself, textile recycling. I am a fashion technologist, so I specialized in apparel manufacturing technologies and worked for some of the largest manufacturers in India, Bangladesh, and Middle East as well, and which gave me a kind of a privileged point of view in seeing the waste from the inside of the industry. And I saw it from every step in the value chain. And I kind of thought this has to be solved. So I moved to the UK and specialized in circular business models in fashion, but still the problem of how do we bring the material back into the loop was always like a bug in my head. I kind of started venturing in this when I saw this huge landfill, and I thought that even if we make the most sustainable dress, it will still end up on the top of that pile. So in order to solve this question, I created Eslando. Eslando is a circular tech company. We specialize in connecting the right kind of waste with the right recyclers. So if you have worked in textile recycling or have worked on your own waste, you must have seen it's not that straightforward, because each recycler is unique and they can only take a particular type of feedstock. So we do all of this complex matchmaking within Eslando, and we work with over 50 recyclers all over the world. So check us out. We have a platform, a marketplace. If you have waste from fiber, yarn, textile, anything, you can upload it with us and we'll find a solution.
Thank you. Yes?
Yeah. Hi. Hello, everyone. So my name is Letitia Forst, and I am a textile design researcher. I work at the University of the Arts, London. The work that me and my colleagues do in design research at UAL is very much focused on connecting like the complexity of textile recycling, textile circularity, whether that's about material innovation with sort of next-gen materials, or at the other end of the supply chain with recyclability, and really connecting that back to what it means for designers. So we work on a range of collaborative, multidisciplinary projects where we're connecting with small and very large brands and helping them to basically connect with innovation in materials or in recycling.
Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you, and thank you for inviting me. My name is Serena Moro. I'm the founder of Chicken Studio, which is a consulting company which is specialized in sustainability in the fashion sector. So we support fashion companies in complying with the new regulations and, above all, using sustainability as a competitive advantage on a scientific perspective, so using data, numbers, and science-based solutions. And we work with both major brands and supply chain companies, so we see both perspectives, and actually we also support different levels of the supply chain speak together and use the same language to find solutions together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So my first question for you is, what sort of recycled textiles available on the market do you prefer, and why? And how can they be democratized? Yeah, you can start.
Okay, perfect. Okay. For me, it's really difficult to answer this question, because I have a background in life cycle assessment, and what I'm teaching and discussing with my clients, I always say that we have to think about the choice of raw materials within a system, within the products and the use we want to have at the end. So it's more a question of what can be used for your specific case. So if we look at the fibers today, we know that in terms of volumes, we have much more recycled cotton today, recycled polyester, recycled polyamide also, in lesser extent other recycled fibers. But if we look at these kind of fibers, we can have some disadvantage and flows. For example, if you are using a recycled cotton to use for a T-shirt, you have to keep in mind that probably as the fiber is shorter when you recycle the cotton, you will probably have to blend that, and it's also questionable in terms of eco-design thinking. If you are taking recycled polyester, it could be also critical because it's coming today mostly from bottle. It's another supply chain, so the question of really circular economy behind it's questionable. So I would say that today I will have to choose something that is ideal, that can give me, the same quality as virgin, but also the same, give me the opportunity to have a monomaterial product, and think about also all the traceability that is behind. So thinking about the social impact behind the supply chain and thinking around that also. So,
thank you.
Yeah, about us, we kind of see recycling in different parts of the world and different materials, as well as different technologies that are being used all over the world to recycle the fibers. I think just from a personal point of view, it is chemically or enzymatically recycled polyester, which is really good, and you can endlessly recycle it. And if you have to compare both, I would still go for enzymatically recycled polyester. And then if you have pointed out many issues in the cotton, but if you are to use cotton, then it will be mechanically recycled cotton. You have to see which material has the lowest impact, where you are based and where the material is available, yeah, but polyester, I'd say it's a very versatile material. You can create any product out of it. You can endlessly recycle it as well. And the other thing about recycled material, you asked about how can we democratize these materials itself. We have to invest in recycling infrastructure. We have to bring in more policies that encourage use of recycled materials. The government all around the world is working on minimum content. So if you are to produce any synthetic product, use recycled material in it. That will be really, really good for the entire industry and for the world.
Yeah, thank you.
Should I pick up that question too then? So, I mean, it's really hard to select preferred recycled materials, partially because they're all very exciting, so just picking one is difficult. But there's also a lot of challenges within each of the different types of fiber recycling. So if you ask me which ones I prefer, there's two that I think are quite interesting to look at. So on one hand, one that I'd like to mention is a material that is produced by a company called Inuio, which stands for It Is Not Over Until It Is Over, which is based in Huddersfield in the north of England, and they do mechanical wool recycling. So wool recycling has got a very long history, there's a lot to learn from, and one thing that's quite exciting about that type of mechanical recycling is the fact that there's no need for dyeing once the yarn, basically the color is embedded in the waste. So there's huge challenges with sorting. You've talked about fiber length, which is also an issue, but that's a really exciting type of material with its own challenges. And then another one that I'd like to mention, also a sort of a process to question, is Once More, which is the material which is a collaboration between Lenzing and Sodra. Once More is interesting because actually, it's really showing us how the industry needs to adapt and be agile with recycled content and the way that the technology is evolving, literally as we're speaking. At the moment, it's got a small portion of recycled textile waste, which is combined with wood pulp, and that's just really exciting when you're looking at a trajectory for a progression that is creating room for improvements and for change, which is part of their approach. So those are the two favorite.
Yes. If I can add something, I'm from Italy, which is in Prato there is a wool and cashmere recycling hub with a long history. And I think first of all, you should see one of the factories that do mechanical recycling for wool because it's amazing. What you were talking about, the fact that you don't need to dye the wool, it's because there are people who are super expert and they choose all the types of waste, knowing what the final color will be. And it's just amazing to see how many skills people have in this sector. And regarding, for example, wool recycling, and this can work for everything. I think that the result that you have also depends on the supplier, because again, wool recycling can be a high quality recycling, lower quality recycling, and sometimes brand try something, they don't like it as a performance, and so they say, okay, this is not working. Maybe that supplier is not working. So sometimes the problem of textiles also depends on the supplier itself. Then we have problems which are problems for everyone. For example, fiber length, and that you pointed out. I think it's also important to test different suppliers because quality can vary a lot. And another thing is sometimes I see brands that maybe don't want to try some recycled textiles because of the performance during time. Sometimes the customer doesn't even reach the point in which the recycled material cannot be worn again because we have a very short lifespan for clothing. So I think it also depends on the type of clothing that you're doing. If you need to use this clothing for a long time, you need to choose a certain quality. Sometimes the cloth is designed not to last so long, and other options can work.
Thank you so much. Yes?
Yeah. If I could add, don't worry about the material. Just choose a lower impact material. That's your best answer. If you are to make a sweater, make it with recycled wool. If you are to make a swimwear, make it with recycled nylon. If you are to make a sportswear, make it with recycled polyester. They are all good. Just choose a lower impact material.
Okay, good to remind this because this morning we had this panel conversation with someone telling, yeah, we have to be more circular, but then others are telling, yeah, but recycled polyester, nah, nah, nah. So it's always good to remind this kind of thing that there are better choice. It's maybe not optimal yet, but it's still better. My second question is, what are the different textile recycling processes mostly used? You have already mentioned some of them by fashion brands today. And which of these processes do you think are the most interesting from an ecological point of view? And I have to say that this panel conversation came in my mind while reading an article about the comparison between chemical and mechanical recycling processes. And I think we are not so much aware about the reality of the processes behind recycling textiles. So, yeah, if you can provide your lights on it, that would be amazing. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Regarding this point, today we generally tend to compare mechanical recycling which is really taking the fiber and shredding it, and after that respin it and doing some clothes, some textile, and chemical recycling, which is really innovation, not really innovation, but not so much democratized today when we are talking about with fashion brands, because it's a bit different. It's taking different resources to do that, because you are using solvent to depolymerize. For example, if we take polyester and we reprocess that into a polymer. And we tend to oppose the different technique because it has not the same. We have in mind that mechanical recycling is less impacting, and chemical recycling is much more, aggressive with the fiber and taking a lot of, solvents or energy consumption. So this is a fact, but currently, as I'm doing a lot of impact measurements, and we see that it's really complicated to have robust and quantitative figures to compare those technologies, because for the chemical recycling, we are really at the beginning of the industrialization also, and you have a lot of differences when you are talking about chemical recycling. You can have hydrolysis, so using water, using different kind of solvent, or also enzymatic recycling. So it's difficult today, but for me, on my point of view, I think it's interesting to explore all of these systems, because it gives you the opportunity also to rethink the model and to see if we can also collect the post-consumer resources, which is today not really captured with the mechanical recycling.
Thank you.
We see it from a very different angle at Eslando when we have different materials and we make them with the right kind of recycler. So what we have seen in the industry is each recycler kind of sets up their facility based on the product they're going to produce. So a mechanical recycler would produce something like these textiles, which are a bit thicker. So these are, you just color separate them, and then you don't need to dissolve them in certain chemicals, or you don't need to do all those extra steps because you're making a very thick yarn. But if on the other side, if you want to make a shirt, like a men's shirt with very fine fabric, with a very fine yarn on it, you can't produce it with mechanical recycling. You need more sophisticated forms of recycling, like enzyme-based or chemical-based, to produce those kind of materials. So it totally depends on the product and how quickly that product is also moving in the market. So ecologically speaking, yes, mechanical recycling has lowest impact, but it has a lot more limitations onto what kind of products we can produce out of it. There's no there's no benefit to the society if we stick to just mechanical recycling, but we can't produce shirts that everyone wears daily. So we have to move on to better forms of recycling rather than we have to see what replacements we are doing. But yeah, it's very tough to quantify, but look at the products that you're producing and what is the lowest impact method of producing those products itself.
To build on that point, I think there's a bit of a danger of focusing on a specific type of recycling as the answer to all issues. I mean, definitely we can see it in fashion media at the moment. There's a big focus on chemical recycling as a way of basically supporting what is seen as a business as usual model otherwise. And I think that's sort of quite blindsided in a way that when we're talking about designing for circularity and designing for recycling, it's obviously a conversation that cannot be divorced from also designing for reuse, designing for upcycling, designing for multiple sharing platforms, etc. And all of these things should be seen in a kind of symbiosis of a circular fashion system. So when we're asking which type of recycling is best, it's obviously connected to what type of output is going to be bought. And in an ideal world, we want those things to function in a kind of cascade system where things get, designed for longevity. They get used multiple times. Once they are no longer rewearable, they go into like the lowest impact, most appropriate recycling system once, and then maybe next time around when they come through, then they've been blended, they've been like sort of dyed with different things that we need to take out, and then they go into a chemical recycling process, which by that time should have evolved and like the technology will have moved on. So it's obviously like quite complex. We know that the supply chain doesn't work in an ideal world, but like the work that you guys are doing, for instance, by actually going like case by case and developing like a model that is really appropriate for the type of business and the type of stream is part of that bigger ecosystem.
Good. Yes, Serena.
To add another point to your points, which I totally agree with, maybe rather than what type of recycling technology I prefer is what scale I prefer, and the answer is huge, because we need a huge scale for recycling. We are like, the level of recycling that we have is still super low. The exercise that I like to do is when I read about a new company making recycling technologies or recycling products, I check what is the number that they plan to recycle in 5 years, 10 years, and I compare it with the number of waste that we generate every year, and you see that we need everything. Like, whatever type of technology you have, whatever fiber you can recycle, that's great. Let's work together to put it at scale. And one thing is, I believe brands have a huge responsibility here, because recycling is another step of the supply chain. But brands have money to invest, and they can do joint ventures. They can do multi-year agreements with companies so that companies can invest and increase their scale, so that when they increase their scale, the cost gets lower and everything gets more affordable. So like, we need to put money into recycling.
Pretty clear. You all agree on these points, I guess. What lies behind the concepts of textile to textile and circular fashion, like for real?
I can go first if you want. All right, cool. So when we talk about textile to textile, means textile converted back into textile. So you break down the textile, you turn it into a fiber, the fiber turns into a yarn, yarn is woven on it into a textile. That is your recycling process. But when we talk about circular fashion or circular business model, when you go to the core of circularity, it means removing waste out of the system. It could be a physical waste, which you can touch, or it could be the waste of the potential itself. So if the garment is hanging in your wardrobe, it is a waste of its potential because it can be worn. So you should be able to rent it out. If you don't need it, you should be able to resell it to someone. If it's no longer wearable, then once its functional capacity is gone, it should go into a different process where it can turn into a raw material. So that's your circular fashion, and that's your textile to textile.
Okay.
And I think today it's, we are not yet that really. It's more, a goal that, and some big brands, are talking a lot about their objective regarding circularity. So I think there are some key, levers to handle first, which are really thinking about the volumes of the product and how you handle the post-consumer waste. Because as we know, 1% only today is collected and really recycled. So here is really a question on how we find sort also this volume, how we process that, considering there is a lot of different kind of clothes, there is a lot of different disruptors, meaning the buttons, the zippers, and so on, that are part of the text. Part of the clothes and with the textile, which is really difficult after that to recycle. So there is really a thinking, novel thinking, and to have also around design and it's really, really complex, and we are not yet that, but ideally it would be great to be able to transform a clothes to a clothes.
Yeah, I agree. Like sometimes we tend to consider circular as recycle, which is not exactly the case. So like I work with the brands, and the brands, they're like, okay, we want to work on circularity, and they design the clothes as they were before, and then they try to put like recycled materials in it. Well, that's not circularity. That's what you two explained. So it's super important to work at the design phase to think about like the end of life, increasing the lifespan, and all what you said. So this is super important. It's not just recycled materials.
Thank you.
And I think it's also important to like not be too pigeonholed onto circularity as like the golden silver bullet, in the sense that we've like, I mean, words change, and there's almost like a trend moving from like one term to another when like people feel like they get a little bit too tired, and so we don't talk about sustainability so much anymore, and circularity in a way has replaced some of that discourse. But circularity is like, well, design for circularity is one strategy amongst a wider, like much wider range of strategies that are available to essentially sort of like decrease the environmental impact of fashion and other businesses. So making sure that circularity is actually also part of an overarching sustainability strategy is really important, whether that's covering social aspects, whether it's covering like questions around like impacts of materials at sourcing stage, and then obviously connecting them to like a full life cycle approach. Like all of those things need to come together. And I guess like the question around textile to textile is also quite an interesting one, because that's what we're focusing on and what like how we're assigning value to circularity at the moment, with this idea of like we want to move away from recycling plastic bottles and making plastic bottles to make recycled fiber, and we really need this industry to look at itself and make sure that we're using our own waste. So I mean, I guess that's a bit tricky also, because it's kind of like closing everything in on itself, and it's actually like we are living in a very dissipative system. So understanding the value of different types of open loops and different types of industrial symbiosis like can be quite important, and doesn't necessarily have to be like opposed to like the golden standard of textile to textile.
Yeah, thank you. Good to remind this. So my last question, oh no, sorry, it's not the last one. What recent advances and discoveries should fashion professionals be following or even appropriating, in your opinion?
I mean, maybe just to pick up on the point around like the open loop and like the textile to textile bit, just because I just finished with that. Like, I think there's some really exciting stuff going on in like these types of industrial symbiosis systems. So what designers can do is try and like look at like their local environment, try and understand like what sources of waste are available, and these can be like obvious textile to textile sources of waste, but there might also be some interesting things in sort of agricultural byproducts, anything that like takes us away from the way that the production of fibers is currently like coming in competition with food, for instance, is something that can be considered. But obviously that has to be like connected to a circular perspective, and like we can't be making clothes today in the way that they are causing us problems, like as they are reaching us. So whatever new garment is made today must be made in line with like recycler parameters that are like quite clearly defined at this point. Like it's fairly easy to understand like what type of recycler will need what type of characteristics in a garment, like what disruptors are, and make sure that those are eliminated at the design stage. And we've got enough to deal with the garments that were produced up to now to avoid making that problem even bigger.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Serena?
Yeah, and I think there are some technologies and some startups which are very interesting. For example, one is Renap that is able to recycle polycotton, for example, which is a big issue now because we have a lot of polycotton waste. So there are some startups which I think are interesting. I believe that the first thing to do to get advantage of these technologies and advantages is to really try to speak with the suppliers, not as they are supplier, but more as like possible solution providers. Because if you think about your product and then again you try to choose the best material, you're not innovating so much. While what an exercise that I do sometimes with the companies that I put together a brand and one of their suppliers, and they're like in a room talking about sustainability and what solutions that they can put together. In this way, you can see all these technologies and advantages not just as like something which is very far from you because your product don't fit, but you can understand how your product can be transformed.
Okay, so it's more a question of methods in this case. Yeah.
I think what fashion brands can do is design for circularity, kind of look at, as she said, like look at the parameters, what is recyclable, what is not recyclable. Look at the combinations of materials that you're using. Like if you're using if you're making a cotton shirt and putting like glass on it and making all of those beautiful embroideries, which is not even recyclable, not biodegradable, nobody wants it. It becomes a bit of a challenge for the after consumer industry, which is all your textile collectors, all your charity shops, and then comes the recyclers itself. They can't really recycle it. So when you put products out in the market, put it with the perspective of either it should be recyclable completely or it should naturally biodegrade into the environment. Anything apart from that is just waste for the world. And the other thing the brands could prioritize is use of digital product passports in their products. We at Eslando are developing our own sorting system where we use that data to kind of tell which exact recycler will take on this product. So those are the things which are coming in. Like there are certain materials which we cannot replace, which are not yet recyclable. There are a lot of challenges when you go into designing products itself. Like say if you are making mountaineering products, you are making outdoor gears where you need the waterproofing in the product, but that is not recyclable. So how do we make sure that these products are going to a separate kind of person? So there are limitations, there are opportunities, embrace them. That's what we'd say.
Thank you.
And regarding innovation, what I'm thinking of is really technologies that, for example, gives you the opportunity to recycle polycotton. That was one of my thinking. I think. And also, I'm thinking about also companies I want also to be, which are, for example, in the US. Like, for example, I'm taking the case of Cirque, which is a US company who wants to be implemented, in Europe and develop a supply chain, because we are missing also that in Europe. So I think to have some investment to really address the issue of the waste that is produced on the territory, it's critical. So yeah, to look at those maybe innovation and the scalability and import in Europe could be interesting. And I'm also thinking about all the technologies that can be that can optimize, sorting. Because here it's also a critical point when you are talking about recycling is how we can better sort to have better quality at the end. And there are some, we are a lot thinking about generally it's manual, there is some also automatized solution, but there is also innovation on this point regarding some, for example, spectroscopy technologies that can
NIR
give you...
systems,
automatic. Exactly, like that. So we are not thinking about that, but I think it's interesting to mention that critical point also in the supply chain.
Okay, good. My last question, and it's really my last question this time. At which level of the value chain should we intervene to reinforce the possibility of optimal reuse of used textiles?
Sorry, could you repeat your question once?
I was asking at which levels, which stages of the value chain should we intervene? You said sorting, it's part of the answer, to reinforce the possibility of optimal reuse and use textile. Because I remember once on another roundtable, the startup, WeTurn startups founders told me, for us it's very important to work with natural fibers. So it means that at the very beginning we already have to, as you said, think about the end of life. But I guess there are other. Someone this morning was mentioning the coating and finishings, which is also a huge part of the problem. So yeah, that was my questions. If there are particular aspects that we should take care about to make it more efficient.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the answer, like, to the question is like twofold. Well, a lot of these questions are set at the design stage. So that is kind of the focus that we take in our research, to like speak with designers, and like designers in an extended kind of sense. So like that could be a lot of decision makers inside a brand, like it could be buyers, like there's lots of job descriptions that have that kind of impact. But then when you actually look at like when that decision is going to take place in the supply chain, then you're looking at so many different stages. And like you say, it probably means like actually going to speak to a lot of suppliers, finding out which suppliers you don't know anything about and trying to solve that issue. So yeah, it is a lot about like the full supply chain, like it is like at the core of a circular design. But just a point that I think is really important also to integrate to designing for recycling and designing for circularity is the fact that it's not just a question of designing your products so that they can be recycled at end of life. You've also got to make sure that you're creating the market for like your waste. So it's like a snake biting its own tail in the sense that you've got to be buying the fiber from the recyclers to make sure that these recyclers stay viable and that they actually are able to continue processing waste. It's also just a question of fairness. Like it's not okay to just be dumping your waste on one part of the system and not expecting to actually be contributing to the flow. So yeah, the answer is just everywhere.
Okay.
I agree to your point, and actually, like, if you're a brand, so you're talking with the final customer, like, you have the power to influence your customer in their behavior. So there are some brands which are doing a great job in, for example, designing products which are recyclable again, like even for sneakers, which are super complex to recycle, because in theory you have so many components, but they were able to design sneakers that can be recyclable again. And then they have, for example, a sort of take-back system. It's more like that you don't buy the product, but you take it for, I don't know, 1 year, 2 years, whatever, and then you bring it back, and the company itself will recycle the shoe again to do another shoe. So, like, if you're able to have control, of course, this works way better. Still, not every brand can do this, of course. I mean, they were made to do this. And so it's super important in any case that you influence customers so that the clothes at the end of their life, first, that the customers increases the lifespan, because that's the first point.
This is particularly interesting for companies which have integrated the factories and to propose this kind of very disruptive business model. Very interesting suggestion.
And actually, it can also work if you don't have your full supply chain integrated, because I have other ideas of other brands in my mind that they collaborate with suppliers, again, like the Prato region for wool recycling. Okay, there are the recyclers, which are amazing, great. But then there are also the brands who buy recycled wool and recycled cashmere, increasing the market for recycled material. Then they sell it, and then they have the take-back system of 100% wool and 100% cashmere products, even if they're not from their brand. And they bring it back to Prato, allowing for recycle again. So these brands, for example, don't have an integrated supply chain, but they build it together.
Yeah, but it means that they have to be close, geographically speaking, to the final consumers. Yeah. So yeah, but it's very interesting, I guess, as a brand, if you can tell, I'm selling you a product, but it's not for just one life cycle, it's for 2 or 3 life cycle. It's like a business argument, right? So, Okay. Any other suggestion?
I think the best thing brands can do, like looking at how complicated the material flow is, like you're a brand, you're selling, the consumer lives somewhere in some street, you have charity shop brings it to the back of the chain, then it comes back to the charity shop, or it goes anywhere. It's a very complex system, and not every brand manufacturer has the resources to be able to take actions. The best thing collectively we as an industry can do is take digital product passports very seriously, because once we pass on the information from one stakeholder, which is your manufacturer, to brands, to consumer, and then to the end of life supply chain, a lot of circular business models can be brought to reality. Like people can resell it amongst themselves. They can easily upload it to platforms like Vinted. They can easily upload it to platforms like eBay or something, wherever you want to sell it. And when it's not, you bring it back to the recycling center and it goes on to the material loop center. So I personally think is the digital product passport is going to be the solution, and how it's progressing, and European Union is doing really good with that.
Yeah. I guess telling brands like you are responsible of your own wastes.
Yeah. With the EPR, and then fees will be collected, and that will go into the recycling system. So I think in the 5 years horizon, this industry and the recycling world is going to look very, very different from what it is today.
Thank you. Aissa?
Yes, to finish. No, for me it's really so complicated, because it's an overall and global system and issue. When we are talking about recycling, it's an issue for the design, because you need to think about the product, as you said, for recycling. It's a question also of technologies. We saw that during the roundtable, the question of better sorting, better technologies to improve the quality, question of tackle post-consumer. So for me it's complicated to put where we can have to do an effort in priority. I would say for me, in my perspective, it's more on design, because it's a first step and where the decisions are made. But I think maybe what could be interesting is also make a designer speak more with the end the recycler, to better understand also the constraint of the recycler. And we saw that sometimes it's really the supply chain, everyone is working apart, and no one speaks to each other. So I think to have more collaboration and more understanding on the job of someone on the supply chain could be also interesting,
Maybe you can provide a conclusion to this panel conversation before the questions. Anyone?
I think my conclusion would be don't stay convenient, don't stay in your comfort zone, don't do business as usual. If you really want to see the change, you really want to see a better future for the future generation, use lower impact material, use recycled materials, go support some innovator who's trying to change this industry, because this is a huge industry and everyone's action is going to count.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, to build on that, I think also it's about understanding the diversity of what circularity can look like, and it's not just because H&M is focusing on chemical cellulose recycling that's what's going to be good for every single brand. Working with local stakeholders is a huge part of it, and really understanding the value of materials that are in any given product, and making sure that can be returned, whatever technology is needed for that, is essentially the way forward.
If I can add something to things to do, if you try to do the exercise of setting science-based target, which means reducing a lot your emissions, you realize that you need to change something in the way you produce, in your business model, and you try to simulate, okay, if I change this material in this percentage of my clothes, how much do I get in terms of emission reduction? and you see you need to do something else. And you try, okay, if I change my logistics, and you see you need to do something else. And at a certain point, you're like, okay, the things I was talking about, I was thinking about are not sufficient. I need to think out of the box. And you realize there are so many solutions out from that box. Because, like, I mean, in 30 minutes, we have spoken about, I don't know how many, like, startups, recycling technologies. We have so many things in the market. We need to make them scale. So think about scalability in your emission reduction strategy and in supporting startups scale and solutions scale, because it's not only startups, and solutions scale. You realize in this way you can reach your targets way easier than just thinking about, okay, if I change one more flight, how much do I get? You won't get it like this. It's important, but it's not sufficient. But there are solutions.
Okay, thank you.
And on my side, I would say that do not fear to try, you know, to try and to put into action what you want to do to reduce your impact. Meaning that do not also overthink of what is the best solution, but try also to experiment and also to drive the innovation. And I think also do not fear also to collaborate and to discuss more with your potential partner or potential,
and maybe just you make me think about one of the other speakers were telling about. It was Eloise Vibrac, I think. She's working with a lot of brands, and she was telling that instead of investing in one little team dedicated to issues, try to elaborate and collaborate with the existing people already working on your business, and see together how, just the way you said, they can be involved to find a solution collectively. Because if it's just like 3 people beside the whole team trying to tell, it's not working so well finally to really progress. And it costs a lot in the end.
But the returns can be positive. It's an investment.
No, but I mean, there are maybe a strategic way to invest, and you are here to maybe help people find it. Do you have questions? We have maybe 15 minutes for questions. Yes?
Hi, thank you so much for the conversation we had here, the meeting that we had here. I wanted to ask, how can we be sure that the fabric we're buying is chemically recycled in terms of polyamide and polyester? What are the requirements we can ask to be sure that the process is not mechanical but chemical?
For polyester?
Polyester and polyamide.
For polyester and polyamide, polyester is thermomechanically recycled. It goes into a process of melting it down. And polyamide, which is available, nylon, is chemically recycled as of today. A lot of these materials can also be mechanically recycled, but if this is, you're going to make stuffing for it. You're not going to be able to make garments out of it. And in order for you to check if this is recycled or not, we can't say what is the source of material yet. The brands are transparent themselves, but there is GRS standards. You can ask for GRS certificate on the material. You can ask for RCS certificate on your materials itself. That would give you a proof that this has been recycled and you're not buying something virgin.
Yes, but how to check that it's chemically recycled, not mechanical?
So most likely, if like all the information that you can get on your polyester is that it is recycled polyester, it is probably polyester that is recycled from plastic bottles. That is like the overwhelming majority of recycled polyester that is available today. So really, if you're interested in like making sure that you're getting like textile to textile, like recycled polyester, whether it's chemical or mechanical, then you'd have to have like a specific supplier with which you which offers you that transparency, which is probably someone who's like at the forefront of the innovation in that sector that you've built a relationship with, rather than being able to like just use an open platform for your material sourcing.
So there is
Does that help?
no certification or document that I can request so that to know that for sure the polyester is, for instance, chemically recycled.
So chemically recycled material is chemical structure is same as the virgin material. It's the same as a lab-grown diamond or a mined diamond. Mm-hmm. There's no chemical difference in the structure of the chain of polymers that you're buying. Mm-hmm. Now, in order for you to certify, in order to you to get a certificate between what kind of method has been used, you'll have to go with a bit of common sense over here. Like bottle to fiber is thermomechanically recycled. There's no mechanical recycling for garments of polyester. So it'll be melted. Thermo means heat. Heat, mechanical, recycled polyester is what you're going to get, which is done from plastic bottles. You don't really need to dissolve the plastic bottles into chemicals at this stage because they are colorless or they have green color on them, right? But if you're going into garments which are made from garments, then you'll have to do chemical recycling on it. But there's no certificate that we are aware of as of yet that can say that this is how it has been recycled.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question? Yeah. But yeah, use a little bit of common sense over here. Ki if this is bottle to fiber, it is thermomechanically. That's the cheapest method of recycling plastic.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good question. And maybe you can suggest to invent a new level certification. Any other question? Oh, yes, please.
Hello, very good to see this discussion here. I'm Mark, I'm from the Netherlands. Actually, I'm the marketing manager of Cyclone Technology. We are one of the producers for textile to textile polyester recycling. In the world, there are two, we are one of them. Okay, so it's really good to see the discussion here. I can tell you now, in the business world, we are facing like the T2T, textile to textile recycling, price-wise is still high compared with the B2T. So we are facing like I contact with so many brands like Inditex, Mango, Bestseller. I mean, I located in Europe, so I contact all of them. So we are facing this problem. They need to think about the costing, which is related to the sales price. So I wonder, from the European Union, what they can do to push the T2T product.
Well, I mean, I'm not even based in Europe anymore, but like everyone is hanging a lot of hope on like what EPR is going to mean, and like no one knows exactly like how the eco-modulation system is going to be like implemented, but that's essentially what is going to be the mechanism to support the development of like textile to textile recycling and a range of other strategies that are there to support like a reduction in environmental impact. So effectively, it's through kind of a penalization system, like associated to the impact of garments, that then gets like counteracted by any measures put in place. So the idea is like you have to pay a specific tax per garment through the EPR system, but then like if your garment is made from a portion of textile to textile recycled content, then you get a discount on that tax, and you can probably get another discount if it's also designed for recycling. We don't really know how that's going to work at the moment, but that's the hope.
And maybe you can take part to a next panel conversation to discuss this kind of issue, because it's true that the communication around this precise topic is not yet very common, so you're very welcome. Sorry, do you want to...
Yeah, I was just saying, like, same. We are not based out of European Union, but in the UK, the discussions have been about minimum content standard, like how much of recycled material will a company have to commit to buying and using in the product. So, and within that, you have different content for cotton, how much recycled cotton will be used by the company. Say, for example, it is H&M. H&M buys 10,000 tons of cotton, and 10% of that has to be recycled cotton. So that's your minimum content standard for that. Within synthetics zone, we are discussing how much of that has to be open loop and how much of it has to be closed loop recycled. So this all declaration will go, because we can't start penalizing the brands when the technologies at scale does not exist, right? So if H&M uses 2,000 tons of polyester and the availability is only 200 tons, why would you penalize H&M for that? So those are the questions that we have to answer when the policy level will be, when the rules will be set from policy.
Thank you. Maybe you can continue this conversation, because I think we had one last question there, and maybe we can take the time for this last question.
There is an issue in recycling, is that when you, whether you do chemical or mechanical, you reduce the quality of the new fiber. Do you know of any emerging methods that guarantees that the recycled thing is at least better or recyclable several times or not?
Yeah, synthetic materials, if you recycle them through chemical methods, it's actually on par with the virgin materials. There's no loss in the quality. You're dissolving the material and repolymerizing the chains of it. When you mechanically recycle a natural fiber, it reduces in the quantity. So let's say you have cotton, and first you recycle cotton mechanically, then the fiber length is going to reduce. And then the second time you recycle cotton again through chemical methods, it will turn into viscose. It won't be cotton anymore. So the quality reduction will happen in natural material as we progress. And same happens in the paper industry as well. It's all cellulose that you're trying to recycle, and you kind of constantly add new materials, and 80% of that can be recycled. But yeah, synthetic materials, you can recycle them through chemical or enzyme-based method, and there'll be very little, very, very little loss of quality. Like 0 to none.
There's also like part of that like way of criticizing the feasibility of a circular economy is kind of based on a very limited model, which is that, like, you know, you have one T-shirt that gets recycled over and over again, or even if it's like, you know, 10,000 T-shirts, that they should all like reach the consumer and reach its end of life at the same time and then go back together in the recycling system. Like, that's the kind of place where, like, yeah, that inability to be recycled multiple times would be an issue. But in reality, we've got so many different cycles, like, you know, like this one T-shirt might be recycled 8 times, but every time it's with a completely different mix of batches of like other types of cotton. So it's not really a limitation that is like causing an issue at the moment. Like, if you look at it on a lab scale, like, yes, like you can't recycle things like mechanically or chemically like 1 million times one after the other, but the system is so dissipative that that's not a thing we need to really consider.
Yeah, I think the question should be more focus should be going into, have we recycled all our textile at least once or not? Then we can talk about the quality and we can talk about the continuous quality degradation once we have recycled all of the textiles that's available out there.
Okay, thank you so much. So if we don't have any more questions, I just have to thank you and invite you to continue the discussion with our speaker to examine maybe your specific problematics. And then we meet in 15 minutes for the last roundtable of this edition, Sustainable Sourcing and Challenges in Asia. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.